Assalamu alaikum. So today we conclude our series of discussions which we based ultimately on Surah Al-Asr. And over the last 2 days, the discussion has been based around the journey of the soul. So just to try and re-jog your memory, how many worlds did we say the soul will traverse?
3.
So we've got 3, 4, it's 5. And which worlds has the soul travelled through so far? So on Friday we went to the world of the souls, and from the world of the souls, our physical body was then instilled with the soul, and it went into a physical human form. And then that soul is in the world of the womb. And from the world of the womb, we were born into the world of the earth, this life, the here, the now, the present. The soul then tastes death, at which point we are transferred into the world of the barzakh. We spoke about how the barzakh was a world which was in between the world of this earth and the world of the eternal hereafter. So today I wish to cover the following points. What journey does a soul go through after death? What happens after we are buried? When does the next transition occur after we are buried? What is a day of judgment? What happens? Importantly, why sit in these majlises where we remember Imam Hussein? Why recount Karbala? What's the point? Finally, I'd like to wrap this up with a conclusion of everything that we've discussed over the last week. So yesterday we left the soul in the world of the barzakh, and that's the world which is after death, a holding place. So we spoke about Malakul Maut, taking the soul away from the body. We said that if our spiritual heart was good, this transition from the earth into the barzakh becomes easier. That means that Islam tells us that the family and friends who have died before us are waiting to welcome us. A key thing to remember that I will very much be alive after death. Your soul will be alive. You will be experiencing things in the first person as you are now. You will be able to perceive everything around you. And so you will see your relatives grieve over your death. You will see those who wash your physical body at the time of ghusl. You will see people accompany your physical body at the funeral. You will see your physical body being lowered into the qabr, the grave. It's said that as the last person leaves the time of the funeral, your soul encounters the presence of 2 angels, that of Munkir and Nakir. Then they question us in our grave. It is said that they will ask us, who is your Lord? What is your book? Who is your messenger? And who is your Imam? We all know the answers to these questions, but it won't be that easy. Whether we are able to answer these questions is determined whether we led an existence on this earth which met certain conditions, whether we testified to the truth, whether we did something with this truth, whether we did good things on this earth, and whether we were patient during our times of struggle. So, how do we know about these 4 conditions? What 4 conditions did we discuss over the last week? So these are the very 4 conditions that we started our discussions on, and that's Surah Al-Asr. So if you go back to Surah Al-Asr, Allah tells us that we need to fulfill these particular conditions so that we are not in a state of loss. So from the moment of death, Allah's justice also becomes apparent. For those of us who do good, Allah from the point of our death makes that good apparent. For those of us who do bad, Allah from the point of death makes that also apparent. Unlike the worldly justice that we live in and encounter, Allah's justice is absolute. and completely fair. Unlike the judge of this world who's only given a limited presentation of the facts, Allah is the most just because He is aware of each and every atom of good or bad we have committed in our lives. It's true that Allah's testimony of those who do good is very beautiful from the moment of death to the entry into paradise. But when you look at Allah's description of those souls who do evil, it's equally terrifying. However, when we consider these terrifying verses, we should remember that Allah's mercy always overwhelms His wrath. It is said that His mercy is such that He loves us more than our own mothers love us, so that the punishment in this life after death is only reserved truly for those of us who are in Allah's judgment deserving of it. I think we've mentioned this idea about Allah being more loving to us than our own mothers 2 or 3 times during the last week. And it doesn't actually come from me or any other lecturer that I've seen online. It's a language of the Arabic that Allah uses to describe this. So the Arabic word for mercy is rahmah. This is derived from the root rahim and mim, which means womb. So in essence, if you look at it in a certain way, whilst we were in the second world, in the world of our mother's wombs, this entire journey is encapsulated in the womb which Allah has created for us. It is said that on the throne of Allah, it is written, "My mercy prevails over my wrath." And so often we also forget about one of Allah's names, and that of Al-Wadud, the most loving. We often don't see Allah like this because we often worry about what happens if we don't do this and if we don't do that. So let's just go back to the grave then. After Munkar and Nakir complete their questioning, we either remain in the grave in a state of peace, happiness, light, comfort, or that of difficulty. We remain in this world of the grave and the barzakh until Allah causes the next world to show itself. And remember, every single person is going to experience this particular state. This is a world of judgment and eternal peace or punishment. So how do we move from the world of the grave into the world of the judgment? The transition between the world of the barzakh and this world occurs on the day of rising, the day of Qiyamah. Allah references this in the Quran as the hour. An hour which will come to pass nobody in creation knows about except Allah. It's said that the hour is instructed to come by the blowing of a horn. A blowing of a horn by an angel called Israfil, whose entire purpose in creation is to await the blowing of his horn. It is said that this angel, Israfil, is present and alive in the spiritual world in this moment, right now, on this earth. His feet are said to be in the depths of the earth, and his head in the skies above us. He has his trumpet ready, in a state to be blown at Allah's command. Only at a moment defined by Allah is a trumpet blown. The blowing of the trumpet causes the entire world to be rolled up and causes the dead to rise from their graves. And that is when the soul moves on into the final world. And that is a day of rising. This is a day where the souls of all mankind are brought up again. Our bodies will be recreated, but not in the way we were before. We are created again, dependent upon the good and bad we've done in the world. So what happens then? We're told that all mankind, everybody, is brought before the throne of Allah in a wide open plain. The Quran then tells us in chapter 25, verse 25, that the angels then come and begin their grand descent. This is a day of judgment where Allah tells us in chapter 69, verse 17, where we will all be brought to judgment and none of our secrets will be hidden. We're going to transgress here very slightly and just change tack. But I think this is important. Sometimes we all, including myself, lose a bit of purpose sitting here in Majlis during Moharram. We wonder what the point of all of this is. And where are we to receive the benefits of the sacrifices that we make with our precious time this Moharram? This is where we are told that our intercession, shafa'at, is delivered. By Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the chain of our Imams, we as believers in the Shia Ismaili Fatimi tradition, as Dawdi Boras, believe that anybody from this chain of Imams will intercede on our behalf to help us to reach salvation on that day. It is said that our attendance at these majlises, where we truly believe in the spiritual presence of Lady Fatima alayhi salam, we recount the sacrifices of Ahlul Bayt for the truth in this physical world. This may help us to reach eternal salvation on the Day of Judgment. So taking wasila in the name of Maulana Ali alayhi salam, Lady Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and our chain of Imams can help us attain this salvation. So we know that if we call upon our Imams and the Ahlul Bayt in this way, our supplications, our wants, our desires on this earth and the next will be heard. This is something we term as wasila. The word wasila is a means by which a person, a goal or objective is approached, attained or received. So if you want something in life or something in the hereafter, our faith allows us to take a wasila in the name of our Imams and Ahlul Bayt. By doing this, all we are doing is seeking assistance from a spiritual intermediary when seeking help. Whilst of course every human being has direct access to Allah, we also believe that our Imams can help us in this respect. So Mullah Sahib often tells us about this in his Vayas, and this is the reason he does so. It is not simply conjecture or myth, but an extension of the absolute truth by which Allah extends His mercy to us. This is our belief as Dawdi Boras, which is confirmed by Allah Himself in the Ayatul Kursi, chapter 2, verse 255. In the Ayatul Kursi, Allah tells us, "Man zal lazi yashfa'u indahu illa bi'izni." Who is he that intercedes for him except by Allah's permission? So, by Allah's permission, we believe that the Ahlul Bayt and the Imams can intercede for us on this day. There are many more spiritual pearls our branch of Shia Ismaili Fatimi thought actually have. This is a branch which relies on scientific rigor in the physical world, under the use of logic, reason, and intellect to form discussions around the spiritual truths which are manifest. For example, you will have volumes and volumes written in a book called Ikhwan al-Safa. Look it up. It's sad perhaps to see that these truths have been hidden for so long. We should hope, though, that we can collectively resurrect these pearls. So let's go back to this plane of judgment, where our Imams also help us on that day, through this process of shafa'at, intercession. It's said that our Nabi Muhammad and our Imams will lead our group of people on this day to the throne of Allah. Those within us and our wadus will cause our hands, our limbs and feet to be white, glowing. This is where we may recap the benefits of washing our faces and arms and feet with some cold water. If you remember yesterday, Mullah Sahib spoke about the sacrifices that you have to make, waking up at Fajr and washing yourself with cold water in the midst of winter. So what happens then? We're then presented with our book of deeds. It's said that the book will fly into our right hand or into our left hand or on our backs. Why our backs? Because on that plane of judgment, we'll never want that book to go into the left hand. And so what's said is that we place our hands behind our back so the book never reaches the left hand. So the book flies into your back instead. Remember what we recite during wudu? We say, let me receive my book of deeds on my right hand. So we're all in Allah's absolute supreme court now, subject to His absolute justice from the all-just Lord. So when I was thinking about the content of today's talk, I took a few moments to open my own book of deeds. It's not very good. Perhaps this may be the opportunity for all of us to do that. Open your book. Look at it. Flip the pages. Examine every atom of action you had ever performed. Now imagine next week that you may die. What do you want to add to this book? So after the book, we then go to the Mizan. And if you think about it, in the Moti Tashawwud, we recite, Wal Mizana Hakkun. We utter, the scales are true. We then encounter the scales of our deeds. This is a scale which weighs all of our deeds, good or bad, and our intentions. No deed, not even an atom's weight, will be overlooked on this scale. Allah tells us in the Quran in chapter 6, verse 160, that whoever brings an atom's weight of good shall be rewarded 10 times the like of it. And he does that, and whoever does evil shall be awarded the like of it, and he shall not be wrong. So if you do good, you'll get 10 times the sawab. But if you do anything bad, you'll get 1 times the sort of punishment, as it were. So it's a 10-to-1 ratio. This is the process of accounting. So then we all are presented towards Allah and He asks us questions. The words of Nabi Muhammad ﷺ paint a very clear picture in our minds of what will happen when we stand before Allah on this day. He said, the son of Adam will be questioned about 5 things. How he lived his life, how he used his youth, how did he earn his wealth, how did he spend his wealth, and what did he do with its knowledge? It said that on that day, we our own selves will not even need to bear a testimony. Our own bodily parts speak the truth for us. So if we had a hand which did wrong, our hand will actually speak to Allah and say, well, you did this and this and this. If our tongue spoke evil and our tongues ate the heart of another human being, our tongues will speak out against us. If our feet took us to places which are places of evil, our feet will speak out against us. In chapter 24, verse 24, Allah says, on the day when the tongues, their hands and their feet will bear witness to them and their actions. We then come across another truth which we bear witness with regularly. If you remember yesterday, we talked about being on the Sirat al-Mustaqim, being on the right path. And we hear this all the time actually. So when we do wudu, we say, let me be one of those who is on the straight path when we're washing our feet. Let my feet not be one of those which stumble. When we go into namaz and we pray Surah Al-Fatiha, we say, Ehdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, oh Allah, guide me on the right path, on the straight path. When we recite the Moti Tashawwud, we say, Was-sirata haqqun, the straight path is true. When we are giving ghusl to the deceased, we wash the feet and we say, may the feet walk a straight path and let them not stumble. And this is what makes our religion so unique. It transcends spiritual and physical truths of the world and makes them one. What's relevant in this world on earth also becomes relevant on the Day of Judgment. So when we recite this to Allah, when we ask Him to keep us on the straight path in this world, we are also asking Allah to keep us on the straight path in the next world. And what I mean by that is, the bridge of Sirat. This is the last point on the Day of Judgment. So far, we've come across the book of deeds, we've come across the scales, we've come across the questioning, and the last thing that happens is walking across the bridge of Sirat. All people will cross this bridge. It's said that this bridge is thinner than a hair and sharper than a sword. There's no light in this bridge, so it's just pitch black. The only light you have comes from you, and the amount of light you emit is dependent upon the amount of good you did in this world. Some people cross it like the twinkling of an eye, some like lightning, and some like a running horse. For those who have little light or no light, they fall. So this is the path of Sirat, which we continuously ask Allah to give us steady feet for in every spiritual action we perform now, during our wudu, during our Surah Al-Fatiha, and in Ghusl. Why do we mention this so often? It's because it's the point of no return. Just like the human baby who is born into the world of the earth, who cannot return into the mother's womb. Just like the human who dies and enters the world of the barzakh, who cannot go back into the earth. Once you encounter this bridge, there is no going back. Everything that you've ever done in life comes down to the crossing of this bridge. Every good deed, every intention. Our prescriptions of salat and roza and zakat and hajj and taharat are fundamental resources to try and cross this bridge. However, don't forget about Vilayat, which is also one of our pillars. Love pulls us through. And that's why, if we develop a deep, meaningful relationship with Ahlul Bayt and our Imams, and if we allow ourselves to love them, if we start to stumble on this bridge, through their wasila they can pull us back up. So at this bridge, this is it. If you fall off it, you enter into eternal punishment, into Jahannam, as we say in the Moti Tashawud, when Nara Hakun, the fire is true. If you cross it, you enter into the abode of eternal, everlasting life without trouble. This is called the abode of permanence, Dar al-Haqqa. One can't even imagine falling from this bridge. Falling into the pits of hell with all the graphic descriptions that Quran describes is unfathomable. Ultimately, as Muslims we've been given a warning that this reality exists. Whether we choose to accept it, or choose to believe it, or choose not to believe it, there is a reality beyond this world which our eyes cannot see, that our ears cannot hear. Saving us from this reality is why Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is perhaps the Rahmatul Alameen. Just like our mothers want us for us peace, contentment and happiness, Allah too wishes for His creation to enter the peaceful abode of permanence, and that of heaven. In many ways, we are shown heaven in this life on earth too. There are moments in life where we attain a height of peace and tranquility, which nothing can compare to. Our soul then lives in eternal space, forever. Time does not exist in this world in the way we know now. The clock does not tick. We do not age. We have no troubles. The grass is always green. So with that conclusion, I would like to take a few moments to recount our discussions this week so far. So on the first day, on Sunday, we spoke about Surah Wal-Asr. We used imagery of drowning in a pool. Drowning to remind ourselves that we're always in a state of loss, and that time was always short in this life. We learned that in order to survive and succeed, we had to wake up in the pool. You had to realize the truth that you are drowning. And if you remember, from that particular discussion, we had to wake others up in order to survive, because you are chained to your brother at the bottom of the pool. We then spoke about the absolute truth of the world and the absolute truth of everything. If you remember, we said that the absolute truth is the one and the same one that 124,000 messengers had preached. This had been a universal truth. It's a very simple truth, that God is God and He is one. On the second day, we expanded this idea of absolute truth. We said that the difference between the speech of man and the speech of God was the same as the difference between man and God. We spoke about the Quran and spoke about the truth that it was, and examples of why we believe it to be the truth. If you remember, I gave you a disclaimer that the contents of that discussion did not do justice to what the Quran actually was. The Quran contains truth that's so vast that even if all the seas were ink and all the trees on earth pens, there would not be enough ink or pen to recount the layers of truth in the Quran. And so on day 3, we spoke about the concept of patience. We spoke about whether it was more difficult to be patient now than perhaps years and years ago. We spoke about that in this world we live in a state of information overload, and we're constantly bombarded with ideas of idealism and perfectionism, which stops us enjoying the moment. We spoke about the pursuit of happiness and how this pursuit was perhaps futile, because happiness is fleeting. That happiness is here one moment and gone the next. Instead, we encouraged ourselves to pursue tranquility, peace and contentment through living a purposeful existence. On day 4, we expanded this idea of patience. We spoke about, as human beings, we only see the smaller picture. In reality, there's always a bigger picture at play, a higher wisdom, a bigger hand, and we used the Quranic story of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr to try and explain why we're sometimes afflicted with trials and tribulations and difficulties. The hope from this story was to perhaps help us be patient. On day 5, we looked at the internal spiritual reality. We looked at the journey of our soul from the world of souls into the world of the womb. And then we went into the world of the earth. We spoke about how the innate good of all men, irrespective of creed, arose from the inner disposition and fitrah to do good, from the soul within us, which contains the light of Allah within it. On day 6, we continued this journey. We moved from the world of the earth into the world of the barzakh. In order to travel between these two worlds, we must experience death. And it is only at death that our physical and spiritual realities become the absolute reality, and when we are shown the truth of all things. And today we spoke about the journey of the barzakh into the world of the eternal hereafter through judgment. I hope, inshallah, that you've all gained from these series of discussions, because I've had to research all of this and put it together in a way that answers my own questions about faith. I'm just a student, just like you guys in this world. I'm not in a position to preach. I'm just sharing my own reflections. Some of this, so for example, the information that I had about wasila and intercession I got from Munasab today, so he confirmed some of this. So it's there simply to reflect the beautiful truths around us that we can reason through our God-given right of intellect. We can all make up our own minds. Through these discussions, I hope you've been given a cloth to wipe the slate clean of any biases and preconceptions that you have of our faith, given to us by men who interpret religion for their own worldly gain, or for the acquisition of evil. Tomorrow, I wish to speak about a different topic entirely, that of chivalry, that of what we can achieve in our youth. The pursuit of excellence, spiritually, physically, and vocationally. How someone like Maulana Ali wasn't somebody who confined himself to spiritual reality, but tried to excel himself physically and within this world. I wish to speak how we can use their examples about the pursuit of excellence in this world. On a final note, let's all pray that we are those who are on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. That's the end. Thank you for listening.